Hello, and welcome to the Silent Evil Podcast, survival horror series where we go back with retro games and modern indie classics, maybe some modern big ones. But it's been a long time since I've done this show. About 5 years or 4 years ago, me and RJ Ainsley started up this Silent Evil podcast, and we wanted to go through some horror games and so on. And it was glorious for, its handful of episodes we did, but then RJ got busy, and the last time we did it, he had to come over at 6 in the morning to podcast.
Yeah.
And when it got to a 6 in the morning point, I was like, well, this is going to be a little bit tough. If I have to wake up at 5 in the morning to talk, okay, here we go. But I'm joined with my good buddy Cameron, who has been on the Old Man Orange show before back in the day. I know for a fact we did, Metal Gear Solid podcast. We did some other ones too, of video games and so on. But it's been way too long. I almost want to say the last time we did it was in the old-fashioned days when I would just bring a microphone over and it was nice and easy, and everybody would just sit around it and so on like that. And now we're all at the video era and all that good stuff. But Cameron, dude, how are you doing?
I am doing fantastic. And when you reached out to me about 2 weeks ago and said, hey, look, do you want to do this thing? Yes, absolutely. Because I do miss it. I did enjoy those couple podcasts that we have done together in the past on Old Man. So that was really cool of you to reach out and ask for this. So it makes me excited too, because I've been getting into so much retro collection recently. So yeah, no. Things have been fantastic, man. Just been working a whole lot recently, got the new job going and all that, took over the whole Western territory, which is more or less, it's Colorado, north, south to both borders, all the way to Hawaii. That's like my entire territory that I take care of now. So yeah, pretty nuts.
So you get fun filled there, and now your time's taken up a little bit more, but you can still pop in some gaming and all that good stuff too, which is most important.
Yeah, exactly. Nope, try to play something every day, So
yeah, no, most definitely. You got to get a little bit in here and there, no matter what.
So what you been doing recently?
So other than just, I've been doing a lot more podcasting recently. I think that's been kind of my main goal as far as creative stuff goes. So been trying to get, just a handful of podcasts out every single week, playing some games, of course, and so on like that there too. Been doing, been playing through some Dragon Quest 3 has been the one I've been really trying to work my way through, and I'm at the total end of it, so I just got to finish it, and then I was like, well, okay, we're going to finish up some Dino Crisis first, and then maybe I'll get back to that one.
I know. It took a lot out of me because Path of Exile 2 just dropped, 2 weeks ago now. I cannot stop playing it. It's taken a lot out of me to go shit, I still need to play, this Dino Crisis, get through this again too. So, but yeah, find balance, I suppose. So,
well, that's what happens is sometimes you get that thing where you want a podcast on a game or something like that, or even a movie or anything like that. And then next thing you know, there's man, but you know what? There's this other thing I really want to play, and it's really taking my time up and so on. But yeah, no, I'm glad we still were able to. I felt like Dino Crisis would be a perfect way to get back into the Silent Evil podcast once more and get this going. And man, this was one of those games that for me, when this came out in 99, I remember me and my buddy Cisco, we rented it from the old video scene, Twain Hartford, if anybody knows. But we just got it, and we're like, oh, cool, it's going to be like Jurassic Park and everything like that, Not really knowing exactly what we were getting into. It just was like, cool, dinosaurs, there's not enough dinosaur games in life. And we remember just getting home and playing it at night and whatnot. And just how terrifying this game was back then, it was one of those ones it was not expecting this. I mean, probably the closest thing that I could think of in there was, Trespasser on PC, just a couple of years beforehand. But man, that first time seeing this game and just, all the scares and the dinosaurs busting out of the windows and everything like that, it was definitely something special. When was the first time you picked this one up?
So I remember more so than anything the demo of the game. I had played that quite a bit. My stepdad ended up purchasing the actual title itself, but they always kept the mature titles up in their cabinet. So I would have to sneak in when dad wasn't at home, and go take it that way. But so between the demo of myself playing it and my uncle being into Capcom Resident Evil a whole lot too, I remember him talking about Dino Crisis coming out and saying, yeah, it's from the creator of, you know, Resident Evil. And then getting excited about it that way. The very first time I actually probably played through it entirely, like on my own outside of that demo was, I don't know, I was probably in my 20s, you know, so like it was quite a while longer, you know, after release, you know, so somewhere in like the early 2010s, you know, is the first time I actually finished it, but I've been playing it for quite a while.
Was that the demo that came in the first version of Resident Evil 3?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought, because I remember that being kind of the cool thing is that, like, you know, Resident Evil 3, it's like they put it in the big box, and I always kind of wondered if they did that because, okay, Resident Evil 2 came in like the double disc box.
Yeah, the double disc.
So I felt like they're like, we got to make it look like Resident Evil 3 is just as big as 2. If we put it in a smaller case, it's going to look like we went backwards. So
yeah, exactly.
Put a demo of Dino Crisis in there. Why not?
Yep. Yeah, so so that was the first interaction that I had with it. I remember playing Resident Evil 2 with my uncle. Was my first Resident Evil title entirely, and going here. From, you know, static backgrounds and, you know, things like that with fixed cam to this title having like 3D environments and like being able to like have cams shift, you know, like as you're moving around, like trip me out so much. I remember that more specifically, more so than anything. But
you know, and another interesting one too is because this one's got it where you can actually walk and shoot at the same time too.
Yes. Yep.
You know, that was because that's the thing is whenever, you know, this goes with any kind of game series, but whenever they kind of have in a sense like a spin-off of like their main series, you know, it's like they'll get experimental, be like, let's try some features out, you know, and if they don't work, it's okay. It's not Resident Evil 3, you know what I mean?
Right.
You can kind of get by with it. So I felt like Dino Crisis did kind of like experiment with some stuff there. Of course, yeah, you have the actual, so there's some things that are not pre-rendered, so you actually have some actual 3D stuff, you know, which you could kind of go. It's same with like Code Veronica. It's like it does make for like there's more camera movement and things like that, but sometimes I kind of wonder like it doesn't make sometimes it kind of takes away from the graphics though. When you have the pre-rendered stuff, that's where it looks really good. I mean, that was always what made Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3, you know, and even other games like Final Fantasy and all that stuff that used pre-rendered backgrounds back in the day, is that gave it a much more lifelike experience, you know, because things looked really good. I mean, they were pixelated, but they looked, it was like, oh wow, that's like actually pretty much realistic looking.
Oh yeah. No, I very much agree too. I think that it's probably a good shift, you know, for them from Resident Evil to Dino Crisis to like do something like that. And especially nowadays, like it's so much fun to go back and like actually replay it now with a more critical eye, as compared to being, you know, like, you know, 10 years old, 8, 9, 10 years old, you know, playing this game for the first time and like being terrified of it. Now it's more like I can kind of break it down to wireframe and go like, you know, why was it created this way? How was it designed? You know, like that type of 3D backgrounds and stuff like that, especially through this run that I'm going through. I really appreciate the way that they do set up camera angles and the way that they can flow through a scene with like a swing cam type. Probably one of the more notable ones is it's a little deeper into the game, but not to jump too far ahead, but the scene where you're in the what is it? It's one of the control rooms, and as you leave that control room, the T-Rex shows up, and you run down that long outdoor section, and then he's like busting through the, you know, like through the sections of the fence and whatnot, knocking you down. That whole scene. I wish I could have captured it so I could like rewatch it like over and over again, just to see like how that was, you know, like put into place, and the amount of technical challenge that they must have had to gone through with the PS1 hardware of that era, you know. So I don't know, just super cool design. You know, like I really enjoy it.
I like that too, and you have sort of those chase cam moments and so on like that. That definitely makes for a real like good experience too, and especially when you have something like a T-Rex. If you didn't have a moving camera, it might be, you know what I mean, like he would pop out, but it would be a little bit tough to like have him chase you in a sense.
Yeah,
you know. you would only just have like pop out scenes and something like that because it's just so large of a creature comparative to like even the things in Resident Evil and whatnot that are fine for static camera and being about a medium height character and something like that.
Right.
Whether that be Mr. X or be even Nemesis or something like that. But no, that does make for a cool moment there too. And even some of those other ones, all those T-Rex scenes are great. Like the one where you're like, you're in like the it's almost like I want to say like the commissioner's office, but
Is it the one at the start of the game or towards the beginning of the game?
Yeah, he busts like through the window. Oh yeah, that one's always kind of the special moment right there. Yep. It's almost like the equivalent of like the dogs coming through in like Resident Evil 1.
Yep.
Just turned up even more, but yeah. Dino Crisis, Shinji Mikami, he's coming in here, he's directing it, he's producing it, so it's like he's putting a lot into this one too. Because this is at that time period, once he kind of does Resident Evil, then he kind of splits off and he does these other ones. So he does Dino Crisis, he does Devil May Cry coming up, soon, and then he's also got Onimusha as well.
Yeah.
That was kind of like the quad Capcom survival horror games that he kind of all put together and started, and man, Dino Crisis is one of those ones like. What I love about it, too, is I think Regina's also a great character. That's like one of my favorite characters in like, not even just like survival horror, but just in general. I think she looks cool. She's badass. I like her kind of like spunk and wit that she sort of has, and she just says shit. Like there's lines in the game where she just like almost doesn't even care. It doesn't have like sympathy. Like, oh, look at that.
No, I know. That first scene where Gale was like standing over that dead body, and they're like, it's like one of the first like dead bodies they come across or whatever, and it's like all like the music's playing like real heavy as she's walking up. It's all eerie and whatnot, and then the music just cuts, and she just goes, "Wow, that's disgusting," or whatever she said, like something to that effect. It's like but no, I fully agree. I think she's a fantastic character. I really enjoy like. And maybe that's like another thing too, is like female protagonist of that era. I mean, I know we had like Jill, and like the Resident Evil characters and whatnot, but I think that it's really neat that was able to be done of that time, and especially with a game that's so heavily like targeted towards like a male audience, from what I feel anyways, with Dino Crisis. So yeah, super cool. I enjoy that character a lot too.
Yeah, no, and I feel just the whole the core crew. You got Rick and Gale as well too, and I feel all three of them are all interesting characters in themselves. You know what I mean? I especially like just Gale's just like I'm the tough guy coming here. I've seen this shit before. Yep. gotta finish the mission no matter what. And then you got Rick the computer dude, who like for some reason has to question everything, and he always wants to make everything more difficult than it really needs to be. Let's be honest, every single choice that he gives you is never the easier one. He's always like, you don't have to deal with any more dinosaurs, but guess what, you're gonna have these really goofy puzzles and so on like that. And then at the end of the day, you're like, just give me the dinosaurs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, pretty much every choice on this run that I've done was just straight up with Gale, just because I know it skips so much crap that you have to go through. So, but
yeah, that's pretty much what I went with too when I was doing my choices. Because I almost want to say the last time I played through, I tried all the Gale ones, but yeah, the Gale ones are definitely, or not Gale. I mean, the Rick ones.
The Rick ones,
but the Rick ones, they do always lead you to some kind of goofy puzzle thing where you're like, hold on, let me pull out a piece of paper and so on like that. I got to write some stuff down. Yeah. I think you get like a bit more amount of like story out of going the Rick route, I guess. But like in general, like, I don't know. It's like when you run into, God, is it Tom or whatever? It's a scientist guy that you're looking for. The first guy who goes undercover to the research facility,
right? And him in that room, like, so you get to experience that as Regina, is like his death and whatnot, Whereas if you go with the Gale route, you skip all of that and whatnot. You go to the outdoor area, and then you just get a call from Rick, and he's just like, "How's he doing? Yeah, he's dead. Okay," and then you just continue on. So.
Yeah, because I was kind of wondering. I was trying to think about it because when you beat the game, like it has the thing where it goes over like your mission report and it says all the characters who like live and die and so on. And I was wondering, I'm like, is there a way that you can get it where that guy survives? But I don't think so. I think that he dies in every single one, no matter what.
Does it? Yeah, I believe so too. But yeah, like, but I think like from I don't know, from the start of the game through the ending and whatnot, the way that, and again, like going in with like a more analytical, like eye on it, the way that the story is unveiled and the way that you pick up all the documents and whatnot, you're reading them. You had made mention in text here recently that you found it interesting that the game doesn't like store those things with you, and that you have to physically remember, or physically write down on a notepad.
Yep.
And, like, I have it in the back of the room over here, but I have like a physical notepad, like with codes and stuff you have to write down. Yeah, I found it super interesting, like how the complexity of the way that the game is set up and the way that the puzzles are set up and all that. Again, not playing it for as long as I have and going back to it, like it's very difficult to remember how everything is supposed to go.
Well,
So,
yeah, this is one of those ones too, because like it's not the longest game out there, but it is quite confusing at some points. Like, and that's what gives it its length. Like, so the first time you play it, it could be a 10+ hour game because you get totally lost in where you need to go to and so on like that. Especially when you get to that third part and like what I always call like the laboratory section, just like a Resident Evil one. There's some parts in there where, if you miss a couple things, you literally are running back and forth trying to figure out where the hell to go next.
oh yeah, yep. Well, it's like that director's room that we were just talking about with the T-Rex that busts through the window and whatnot. The 2-panel keys for that room took me probably burnt up a good hour and a half of my time, just trying to figure out like, where do I go? I'm just walking in circles nonstop until you finally run into the one door that you just forgot about.
Yeah.
And then it's just like, oh, there it is. Okay.
Yeah, no, there's definitely some of the. There's a handful of features in this one that, like, well, one, just not remembering the files, because, it's like Resident Evil, you could always look up your files. So, like,
Right.
as long as you found it, if there was a code or something in there, so this one you have to either manually write down anything of interest in there, or I did do it since I played this on the PS5 on this version, because I got this game on both PlayStation 1, Dreamcast, and but I was playing that PS5 one. It was like, oh, I can just take a screenshot of it. That's the way.
Question.
That's the way. Oh, code screenshot.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
How to do this part? Screenshot. Yeah.
Got that modern technology. Hell yeah. What version is it on PS5? Is it the PS1 version or the Dreamcast version, or
No,
which one
it's
is
still
it?
the PlayStation one.
Is it?
So yeah, and it's one of those ones, like the Dreamcast one's just slightly slicker looking, which I think kind of like there's a PC version too, which I bet you is actually pretty good looking, but they never re-released it, so of course you have to go buy a real expensive ass copy of it if you want it, or find a place to download it. But I bet you that one, because the Resident Evil ones on PC look really good. They're pretty crystal clear looking, which is always generally that's like always the best part about PC stuff. And then the other thing I noticed too is the PC versions of Resident Evil, you can skip the door loadings. So I bet you could do that in Dino Crisis as well.
Oh, really? Yeah. Yeah, I'd be curious because I know that GOG launched Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3.
I bought those versions.
Right. I don't remember seeing Dino Crisis on there. I'd have to look, but
I actually double checked when I saw that it came out for PC. I was like, oh, I wonder if you can buy it on GOG or anything like that. And I was like, nope,
not there. Nah.
So, and they actually, Dino Crisis 2 is actually on PC as well, so that'd be kind of interesting too, because I thought that one was always landlocked just to PlayStation 1. But,
really? See, I never played Dino Crisis 2 or 3. Like, I'm aware of their existence, but I've never played them.
I kid you not, Dino Crisis 2. Now, it's definitely more of an action survival horror game, but that is probably, in my opinion, one of the top 5 most fun survival horror games I've ever played, if you want to call it that. Yeah, I love the living daylights out of 2. 2 is so good.
Really?
Don't get me wrong, I love 1. 1's classic, and there's great stuff in it, but 2, I think it's kind of like almost, I guess you would say, kind of like a Resident Evil 4, where like, yeah, it's a little bit more action oriented and so on, but like it's just continuous. Like the pace is excellent.
Really? Okay.
You go through, you just have a lot of fun. You kill copious amounts of dinosaurs.
Sure.
So I mean, it gives you because that was the one thing I remember as a kid too. Is like even when you play Resident Evil, you always kind of thought like how much fun it'd be if you just kind of went through just blasting the living daylights out of like everything along the way and just don't get me wrong, I like the survival horror elements, but there is something fun about just having ammo and just, blowing zombies apart and, same thing with dinosaurs. And Dino Crisis 2 literally delivers that.
Really?
In such a great way. So I kid you not, if you haven't played Dino Crisis 2, go out of your way and totally get it. Or maybe we'll play that later down the line.
Okay,
I would 100%
okay.
go through another run.
Yeah.
Because I love that one so much.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. Like I said, like I've just never, I don't know, I never played them, never really had interest in playing them or whatever. But yeah, no, that sounds like a good idea actually to me. So so where,
and then
what is that?
and then I was gonna say, and you mentioned 3, and I do have 3 on Xbox, and I remember because that one had the space theme, and I thought like, I can put up with the space theme, that won't bother me, but the game has like they changed the controls, and it's that one where like somebody thinks they got a better idea how to do the controls, and it's like
Sure.
no, give me tank controls, give me that. So it's got like it's really hard to play.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, it's got some funky. It kind of reminds me of like Tomb Raider, Angel of Darkness. How like somebody thought they should try to change the controls, and it's like no. Tomb Raider has been perfectly fine the whole way through. Don't change what works.
Right. Yeah. Well, heck yeah, man. No, I'm totally game for that for sure. Yeah, we totally should. But
it's funny. I was thinking in Dino Crisis because with the story here is I was trying to remember like how the dinosaurs exactly appear in it, and I want to say in the second one they mentioned like there's like time travel in that one for some strange reason or something like that, which I guess makes sense. You pull dinosaurs from the past and whatnot, but it's like in this one the time travel's never mentioned, so it makes it feel like they're just all kind of created here on this island. I mean that's the whole mission is you're going to investigate this pretty much Jurassic Park like island out there where somebody's doing some well they don't know they're doing dinosaurs yet. They just know that there's some weird like kind of maybe not biotech, but like nuclear tech energy, the third energy.
Yeah, the third energy. Yeah. No, because I mean, I'm pretty sure you read it in the because this is some of the research that I was doing on Wikipedia and whatnot too, and I'm pretty sure that you find some like notes and whatnot that talk about the way that whatever that generator is at the end of the game is like creating these like rifts in time basically that are when you enter into the secret lab office of Dr. Kirk or whatever, and you see that like weird orb looking thing that's like floating over the desk, and then there's a later scene that you can't get past a hallway because there's another one of those. It's explained at that time that the basically that generator is like causing these like rifts in time basically that are like what you're witnessing there, that are bringing dinosaurs back in from 65 million years ago from that island. So like there's a scene of Rick like throwing the coin into it or whatever, and it like stretches and like rips and then just like disappears. It's like theorized that like when he did that, like that coin disappeared 65 million years prior, like back to the island at that particular time. So I'm pretty sure that that's why the dinosaurs are there.
Okay.
So
okay, that makes more sense because I was gonna say I really remember that from the second one, but then I was like, do they have the time travel thing in the first one? I can't remember that there, but okay, because that makes more sense then because that the whole energy thing creates the time travel, and Dr. Kirk's just running like a madman here to become pretty much a god of the world and whatnot, taking this technology and taking over the world and whatnot, and. You learn later down, like towards the very end of the game, that Gale does it. That he's actually here to take the technology from this island and bring it to the military, and use that third energy power, for war and so on like that. But of course, Regina and Rick don't know until the total end.
Of course. But yeah. So we've talked about this a little bit too, and like I think that a remake of this game, because not only could you like do it 1-to-1, which I think would be very boring. I think that you could add a whole lot more to this game, to make it a more lengthy. If they pumped it up to like maybe 20 hours, let's say, like double the length of where it is right now, but added more enemy variety, added more, don't give me 2 crane, puzzles to do. Like split those up. Give me something else, because like the cranes are annoying, stuff like that.
Those crane puzzles are, those are like those ones. There is nothing wrong with looking those ones up if you don't want to just waste your time.
Yeah. Admittedly, there was a couple puzzles that I looked up, especially the hexagrid ones where you got to like map, like the different circuitry boards and stuff together.
You spin those around.
So annoying.
Yeah, because this is one of those games that every single time I've always played it, there is moments where it's just you just got to look something up. I remember back in the day playing this when I had it on my Dreamcast version because that was the first time I ever really beat it. And that was the one where I'd pull up the web browser thing on the Dreamcast to look things up.
Yep.
In like an old school way, but yeah, you kind of have to. But I do think a remake of this game, if you kind of made it like the Resident Evil 4 length, give it the Resident Evil 4, gameplay, the RE engine of nowadays. Yeah. And it's true, because this is the thing about Dino Crisis. Dino Crisis is great for the time it is and everything like that, but it definitely is one of those experimental games. It is kind of working things out. It's trying things. Some things work. Some things are maybe a little bit chaotic, all right. Yeah. And then it's also like the dinosaur variety, because really there is, in this game, it's like, what do you got? You got probably 6 different dinosaurs, and technically some of them are just sort of fusions of each other.
Right.
So you have, there's the compies, there's the raptors, of course. You have the T-Rex, which is your main, nemesis, villain that chases you throughout the game. You got the pterodons or pterodactyls, whatever one they are, and then there's the secondary, like the souped up raptors. And then there's whatever
like
the heck
blue raptor.
yeah, the blue raptor, and then there's the stomper guys, where
right.
whatever those dinosaurs are. But that's pretty much all there is in it. It is kind of simple. I mean, even gun wise, you have a handgun, you have a shotgun, and you have a grenade launcher. That's it.
Right.
And they get upgraded parts along the way, but nothing too radical. You know.
Yeah. No, when I picture a remake, like I imagine like. Use the core of the game and what it was, but do a complete reimagining of it, because I do feel that it could be something like very special, because it is so off the wall. It is such a risk, and especially at that time, like think about Capcom, like coming off the heels of Resident Evil 2, 3, to make this and just throw that out in the ether to like hope that it'll do well, the amount of risks the companies used to take, with innovative ideas like this, I think is super interesting. So why not recapture that in 2025, like to, do a remake, a reimagining of it. So
most definitely. Well, and I still, you go back into the 90s and so on like that. And I think this is why we got a lot more variety back then, is because games weren't as much of a risk back then, because, you only had 40 guys working on these games, not 500 people like there is nowadays. You could probably pump out Dino Crisis just using the Resident Evil engine in like less than a year, where like once again, like nowadays, you have to commit a little bit more to it. If you do a Dino Crisis game, that means you're not doing a Resident Evil game for like the next year or two.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it's one of those ones there, but I definitely think it's one of those ones. I don't see a reason why Dino Crisis wouldn't sell well again. Yeah. I even say it's just in dinosaurs in general. I don't know why dinosaurs never, ever really captured more video games, because really, you have Dino Crisis. Of course, you have the Jurassic Park games. You have Turok, but even Turok only has dinosaurs in a few of them. Once you kind of get to like Turok 2 and 3, dinosaurs kind of go out the window, and it's more mutant-type stuff more than anything else there. So it's weird that there's just not more dinosaur stuff in more games. I don't know why that, and I think the same thing with movies too. It's just strange that people didn't just there's so many things you could do with it. It's not like you're never just gonna be like, oh, I'm ripping off Jurassic Park or anything like that. Like no, there's so many ways you can go with this. Right. Everybody loves dinosaurs. I don't know why we don't have them everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and especially for it to be in the horror genre, and especially the survival horror genre. That's what I find so interesting with this title in particular. Having limited resource. So that's another thing that I was thinking about consistently playing through this run is like when you enter a hallway and there's 2 raptors in there. It's it's like do I burn my ammo here, or do I run past them, get a little bleed damage, use a hemostat, and then move on? Like what's going to screw me later? Like that type of thing. So to have that design ideal of dinosaurs within the survival horror genre, I think is super neat. And with a remake potential, like there could be so much cool stuff that you could do with that. And especially the way the Dino Crisis is, even comparatively to Resident Evil. So yeah, I mean that's just kind of my thoughts. But
well, and you mentioned that too when you kind of do your survival horror like sort of strategies of like, okay, do I fight these dinosaurs here, or do I run, or maybe take a little damage and run through? And that was the other ones too. Is like they put the hemostats in there because that was a new feature too, where like you could have bleed damage. But this is another interesting feature that's in this game. Is say like you run past the raptors and you think you're safe. They add in that Jurassic Park feature where the raptors can sometimes open doors, which I think is like one of those ones like that's like you thought you were in the clear, but wait a second, that raptor's gonna still come and get you.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. The another weird design thing is like, whereas like in something like Resident Evil, it's like you're picking up loose ammo boxes all over the place and whatnot. You're doing puzzles to do that type of stuff. In this game, it's like you're picking up plugs and you're finding things on walls, that are different colors, and it's just like, I need more shotgun ammo. There's a red thing on the wall. I'm just going to plug, the thing and get the shotgun ammo. So, that was something, especially after not playing it for as long as I have, to remember that, because like I'm just looking for, shotgun rounds and pistol ammo everywhere that I'm going and not finding it. And then finally just like one day, just like dawning on me going, oh, wait, we have these like locks in the wall.
There's like these storage compartments and so on like that. I know it's like that. That's, I mean, there's a lot of those kind of experimental ways to go about it, and so on. And it's kind of neat. Like, I don't know, like the storage block things are kind of like they replace the boxes that you'd have in Resident Evil, but the downfall is you don't get that same thing where like, hey, I can pick my stuff up out of any of these ones. Like those ones are like, no, that box is there, and if you left something there, that's where it's at.
That's where it's at.
Granted, Dino Crisis is one of those games I feel like I don't have that inventory issue like Resident Evil. You can hold a little bit more in this game. And very rarely do you ever get to that point where you're like, oh, I have too much stuff in my inventory. I need to go drop something off. Right. It's mostly that like, okay, you burn through some health, you burn through your ammo, and then you pick up more stuff and you keep going, which I do kind of like that a little bit more. Yeah. Because, sometimes that's a little bit annoying feature. And like, especially in like, I almost want to say like in Resident Evil 1 when you play as Chris and it's like you have 6 slots.
Oh yeah, yep.
It's like one of those ones where it's like, okay, now that I know how to play the game, I've played it so many times, it's not a big deal. But like, at first you're just dropping stuff off left and right and trying to figure what you need to carry and so on. Yeah. But there's something kind of nice about this one. Doesn't have that issue's not there as much. And then I also like because all your critical items don't take up the same space, which is kind of nice too.
Right. Yeah. Having the design of the way that the menu looks, just like even like visually the way that it looks and how you flip between them and then, flip left and right between like the different pages of stuff. That's super interesting to me too. Cause again, like just direct comparison to Resident Evil, that came directly prior to it and just all the changes that they made into this game to differentiate it. I think it's super neat. But yeah, God, there was something else you just said that, I'm trying to remember. The healing system. There's no like like heartbeat bar, and stuff that Resident Evil had. Like it's very visual. It's very based off how Regina is acting in the environment. I think that is super cool too.
I do want to say, I could be wrong, but I almost want to say for sure that if on the Dreamcast version with your VMU plugged in, it does show it on there. So that was kind of like a bonus feature probably for the Dreamcast over everything else. But I know I kind of noticed that too because I went to look in the menu once. I'm like, oh, this goes kind of back to Resident Evil 1 where it didn't tell you. You just had Resident Evil 1, I think, you had to look at the color. Because they didn't have the, it's not like Jill or Chris started to like, kind of walk real slow and drag themselves along. I think they just died. It was just like, I guess I'm dead. Yep. I guess I'm that low on health because I think you got to look in the menu to see the color. But this one doesn't do it. You have to. It's all based off how Regina is. Like, how is she moving? Is she bleeding? All that kind of stuff. Right.
Yeah. I experimented a little bit in like from full health. Like having like a full heal. Getting bit by a raptor and then bleeding. How long that would last, and I think like in like real time it was like 8 minutes or something like that before she like finally just keeled over and died. Because I was thinking about again like how Resident Evil style games are built, like RE likes are built, especially with this, and you have ventilation systems to be able to like skip through sections. You have like double backing over different ways to get around the levels, more or less, is like what I'm getting at and whatnot. And when you're in that situation of like, shit, I left my hemostats in this particular locker across the, like, how do I get there quickly enough, knowing, you know, and like, and I needed to like have that in the back of my head of like, okay, if I get a bleed from full heal, how long does that last? Like, how long can it take for me to get to a place, to actually, granted, the amount of items that are in the game, I don't think that that's ever really a big problem. The game's not large enough in scale for that to like really be an issue, because I think that you can get from the furthest point of the map to the other side of the map probably within that time frame anyways, if you're just sprinting. And again, with the amount of items that are physically in the game themselves and the upgrade stuff you can do with those items, like I don't think it's ever really a problem, so.
Yeah, you would kind of have to screw yourself over for that to be an issue, or just really get confused on where you left anything.
Right.
But most likely you can. And the thing too is, it does have an interesting. I do kind of like the recovery system it does have, because okay, you have just normal med packs and everything like that, but the cool thing is you can upgrade them too with like the aids, and then they also have the multipliers. There's a handful of ways that you can upgrade them. The intensifiers too, so you can increase their like dosage and everything like that, and you can get them to like where it's like, okay, now it's a med pack, now it's a med pack large, now it's a med pack that also heals bleeding, and then they even have the resurrection packs too, so like if you pretty much, if you die, you can be resurrected with it and so on like that. So it gives you
how does that work in World?
I don't know. Yeah, like hold on a second, I'm going down, it's literally like it's like being able to like pick yourself back up in Gears of War automatically. You generally should need a buddy, but yeah, it's like one of those ones. I don't know, I didn't die in this round, so I can't remember how those packs even, like what the cutscene looks like when that happens.
Yeah. I don't even know either. I haven't had resuscitation packs on me when I die, so
yeah. Well, and granted, I hate to say, I'm playing the PlayStation version, so if I ever did die, you just go scroll back a couple screens. Okay, there
you go. So does it has save states like that on the PS5?
Well, the cool thing about the PS5 PlayStation games, and that's what I kind of like about them, is you can save state, of course, but you can also rewind it, which just makes it like, because I did that. That was like the same thing with like director's cut too, and when I was playing through Resident Evil on there. And it makes it kind of fun. So if you do kind of mess up, it's like, whatever. You don't have that, like, oh, fuck. Because, this is one thing that from back in the day of playing those games is nothing was worse when you're trying to do a run in a Resident Evil, or I don't never necessarily did in Dino Crisis, but we're like, you're like, I'm not going to save. I'm going to go the whole distance and so on like that. And I've seen it happen too many times. But, you get somewhere towards like 3/4 of the way through the game, and then some liquor just gets the best of you. And that's it.
That's it.
Those last 2+ hours, whatever the heck it was, because you were doing a speed run, all done. So there is something nice about being that, like, oh, okay, like say like you just make a mistake or something like that, you can kind of back it up, and it's like, okay, cool. And I call it, like, I just say it saves time. You know what I mean? I know some people always look at that like, oh, it's kind of like it's cheating. I'm like, you're just saving time. That's all you're doing.
Right, exactly.
You're saving time, you know what I mean? And then the fun thing too is I can test things out, because sometimes I want to see what happens. Like I'll be like, if I was playing it like on the original system where you're like, no, it's not worth having to restart the whole game or even restart from a save for this. But sometimes you're like, what happens if I do this instead? Or what happens if instead of like shooting this creature, I just run to the side, and can I just get by it? And then it's like, it's kind of fun because you can test things out that way and go, oh, I could just do this way instead. That actually makes it easier to get past this section, and you learn more from that kind of like experience.
Yep. No, I agree. I think the other funny feature that's in the game are those they're super like artificial in a sense, but the gates that you can turn on, the laser gates.
Oh yeah.
And like as you're moving like hallway to hallway, it's just like you have two raptors just right on your ass, but like hold on, wait 1 sec, let me push the button, and then I found that really funny. The other one that caught my attention too is using vents. So when you're in those situations of being chased by some dinosaur or whatever, and then like you interact with the grate on the ground, and it says like, do you want to go up into the vent? And then you're like, yes, and then it like goes to the next thing where she's like hooking up, and then like slides up the pole or up the rope or whatever, getting up there. But I'm just like thinking about it from the dinosaur's perspective that whole time of just like, just like, hold on, wait. So, yeah, games are funny.
Yeah. No, I do. The electric fence thing is kind of a cool notion that, like, especially when you're trying to conserve ammo or anything like that, is that you can run and you can trap them in there. And I think that's great. And the gates actually can eventually kill the dinosaurs, I noticed.
Do they really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, that's cool.
Because I wasn't too sure at first, but I remember one. Now, granted, I did shoot it a couple times, but then I saw, I was like, it ran into the fence one more time and it died. And I was like, oh, it can get it.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I just looked up real quick too, just because I was curious about it. But Dino Crisis is 100 or any percent speed run is hour and 16. Well, call it an hour and 17 minutes, basically. That's interesting.
Yeah, this game I feel would not. It would, like, Resident Evil 1 is definitely like my go-to of like my classic speedrunning games, like in the original version, not director's cut. I love that one for it, especially the DS version. I think because I just have such great memories of, like, I remember one time in school, literally in each period, I beat the game.
Oh, really?
so that was all I did. And I remember I got that time down so low. Like, well, in that game, you could get it like under an hour and something like that. Dino Crisis is one of those ones, I hate to sort of say it, you would have to play this game like 3 or 4 times before you really probably got it sinking in.
Oh, sure.
Because there's so much goofy little stuff in this game. It's not just like you're like, oh, grab the key, go here, get the item, turn this switch. You know, because a lot of those ones, it's like there's a lot of that kind of like, okay, this, you know, and they have a lot of those codes where it's like, you know, you get the card keys that all have like the letter after them, and you have to have 2 of them, you know, so they got some of those kind of ones where it's like, it's not just like a key that you recognize, like, oh, here's this. It's like, oh, no, what's this one?
Right.
It's key W. Now I need, you know, code W to go with it. And you got to do all those kind of doors and so on like that. And then, you know, they have like those ones where you have to decipher them, which realistically the words are, it's one of those, once you mostly figure it out, you're like, oh, I almost could have guessed that.
Right. Yeah. Well, in the majority of the doors, so it literally just happened to me in the run that I'm doing right now, but the, oh God, it's what's his face's office. It's where you and Gail both do the code at the same time or whatever, the key cards at the same time to go into the secret office. And, God, I just did it like earlier today. I can't remember what the thing. But anyways, yeah, being able to like the head office, for example. I know this one for sure. Head office, and it's like your decipher. And it's just head. It's like, okay, secret government facility, you know. But like, you know, whatever. So
it makes me wonder what they are in Japan. That's what I sometimes think about.
Right.
But then again, I don't know, because, you know, it's like, I remember back in the day, like, getting a copy of Resident Evil, the Japanese one. I'm like, oh, this is going to be interesting. It's going to have, like, Japanese, like, dialogue and all that stuff. And the game's pretty much identical. It's like, it's literally like the U.S. one with just some slight, like, text translations on some items to Japanese. It's like, it's kind of weird. It's like, oh, that's ironic. It's actually, you know, almost more of an American game from the beginning. And I kind of wonder if Dino Crisis is sort of like that too, or maybe the menu's in Japanese, but then everything else is still, I don't even know. I wonder if the voiceovers are in Japanese in it, you know, because they aren't in Resident Evil.
Yeah. Actually, I don't know. I've only ever had this one version, you know, before. So, yeah, I have no idea. It'd actually be interesting to get you know, a Japanese version and see like kind of what the core differences are, if there are any, you know. So, but it actually makes me wonder too. So a couple weeks ago, I was down in Modesto and doing some retro game shopping. I saw Dino Crisis there on Dreamcast, and they wanted $80 for it, and I was like, you know, I already have it, but you know, it's a cool version anyways, you know. But outside of graphical differences, do you know of any differences between the Dreamcast and PS1 version?
No, because I mean, yeah, the Dreamcast version, like, I do prefer those ones for, like, the Resident Evil 2 version's really cool on there. Same with 3. I love the way that I just feel like they feel real natural on the Dreamcast controller. Plus, you get the little VMU thing. It's not much, but it is just like a little cool bonus. Because on it shows your ammo and it shows your health, which is kind of neat.
Yeah.
But God, for $80, no, you're probably not going to get that much more. But it's funny when you say that, because I could have swore I think I bought my copy for like $10 back.
Oh yeah,
you know, granted, when Dreamcast games used to be you know, just pretty much tossed out almost. You know, they're worth not really anything. But
and I've just like considered bootlegging, because I have the version of the Dreamcast. It's the model number of the Dreamcast that allows you to, you know, use like burnt discs and whatnot. So like, as long as I can, like, I just need a disk drive, really, you know, and then I can start like mounting ISOs to discs and actually playing like native type stuff. So
well, realistically, if you ever want to do that, like, because I use that feature a lot because, you know, especially for playing a bunch of getting Japanese games and all that stuff that you can't get in the US, is the Dreamcast is one of the best systems for easily burning, you know, ROMs the disc, and then they play perfect, and then you get that experience, you know, because that's really at the end of the day. I've come to the conclusion when you want the retro gaming experience, more than anything, it's actually the controller in your hand. The controller in your hand is what changes it, the whole aspect. It has nothing to do with a lot of other stuff, but it's like one of those ones. It's like, and especially if you have the system, the control in your hand, it's almost like your body doesn't know the difference that you're playing, in a sense, a ROM version on real hardware. But that's really cool. But like I like to do is just. Saturn, you can also do somewhat easily too, is you can burn games on there too. Yeah. You have to have that that extra little card in the back, but other than that, though, that's it. But then you can play the Dreamcast versions of Resident Evil 2, 3, and then of course Dino Crisis, and they look better too. That's the nice thing. They're just a little bit slicker, you know. Kind of like the way that the GameCube versions are too of Resident Evil 2 and 3. They're just that much slicker looking compared to like the PlayStation.
And like I would love to have like all those original versions, but just talk about cost, dude. Like the costs on them right now are insane. It's like, you know, so I mean, like at this point with my retro collecting, like I pretty much have everything that I want per se, but like there's very hyper specific things that I want that are just way out of range. Silent Hill 2, for example, would love to have the original copy, black label, Kate, you know, complete in box, but it's like $200 right now, you know. It's like, geez.
That's why when it comes to collecting, I kind of stick to, I always call it like, I like to collect some things that don't cost like an arm and a leg, you know, like those ones where like kind of like I'm hopefully not paying any more than maybe $30 of like a version. So like what I've been doing for my collecting is I've been collecting Tomb Raider games is what I've done.
Oh, really? Okay.
So yeah, because I was like they're not that expensive. I can kind of get them all, and then I started doing the thing where I got all the PlayStation 1 games. I have all the Sega Dreamcast ones. I have I got the PS2, and then I start buying like the this is when you get like really into collecting, when you go like, okay, now give me all the variants. So I'll get a game, I'll go, give me the PS2 version, give me the GameCube version, give me the Xbox 360 version, give me the Xbox original version, and give me the PC version. I thought about collecting the Mac versions, but the Macintosh ones were the only ones that were stupid expensive. They were like $100 for them in the box.
Wow.
But I got the majority of them. I just need the PSP ones, a couple maybe like variants, and there's like one more Game Boy one, and
that's
I have
cool though, man. That's
I like those kind of collections where like for the most part I don't think I spent more than $10 to $20 for each one.
Sure,
you know.
Sure, yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at. Like I just keep like finding like bundle packs, you know, of stuff. And the issue with doing it that way on eBay is that you get a bunch of stuff that you don't want, you know. But more or less I've been just like donating those to places like what's that little toy shop downtown?
Shit. Yeah, I know
little roots down there and whatnot,
yeah.
You know. But you know, like doing stuff like that, or just giving them away, you know, to like buddies and whatnot, you know, like MLB titles and stuff like that I'll never actually play, you know. But I guess it really just depends. Like if you can find a seller on eBay that just doesn't know the value of things or just doesn't care, you know, then you're in luck, you know. But otherwise, if you're individually hunting for individual hyper specific games, you know, again, especially within this genre of what we're talking about, survival horror, stupid expensive, you know.
Yeah, no, survival horror is definitely one of those. It's just like horror movie as on VHS and so on like that. That's the most expensive section there. That's why I keep saying like we just need another recession to happen. When a recession happens, all the prices go down, and that's when it's nice.
Right.
Because the last golden time period of buying games was like 2008 to like 2013. Yeah. That was when things were pretty darn cheap again.
Yeah. And that's what makes me upset is that like I sold my entire Xbox, PS2, GameCube collection like during that era because I wanted the new games, you know, that were coming out. So
yeah, you know, and I've done that. I haven't sold like my entire one, but I have chipped away some of my collection over time, and most of the time I end up kind of just regretting it, even if it is something like, God, should have just held on to that a little bit longer. You know what I mean? Like, you know, one of those weird ones. I mean, I'm not really opposed. Like, I still like I'm fine with emulation for like a lot of stuff. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if I'm gonna play a Super Nintendo game, let's be honest, I'm just going to play it on emulator. It's just one of those ones. It technically, in my opinion, is better. Don't get me wrong, I think it's cool. I still have my Super Nintendo and all that good stuff. But, it's just the small things. I can do save states so I can play a game over a course of a week. I don't have to just leave the system on like a maniac, like you had to do back in the day, where I remember doing that with, like, the NES, and that was the one I was like, well, I hope this doesn't burn down the house while I'm at school.
My first 2 runs of Metal Gear Solid 2, I didn't have a memory card. So they stayed on for weeks on end.
I remember doing that too when I first got a PlayStation 1. I didn't realize you needed a memory card. I went from Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo.
Okay.
So it was like, and I remember like I got Spyro and I just left the system on.
Yep. Funny.
That was what you had to do until I got one. But oddly, Resident Evil and Dino Crisis kind of work out for that because like you almost are. They mostly give you more benefits because you didn't save.
Yep. Yeah. I find going back to the game real quick too, like the mechanics of the save system of like you just have like a room, in multiple sections throughout the game or whatever, but some of them are like right next to each other. So you have like a save room here, and then you go through 2 doors, and then there's another save room. Like so some of the way that the mapping worked in the game, I don't know, like they could have been a little more spread out, in my opinion, I suppose. But
yeah, well, even just the mapping in general, sometimes that map is a little bit confusing a lot of times. Like I do get turned around in that game. Sometimes I'll look at the map and then go, whoops, wrong door. That was not the direction she was facing, I guess.
Right.
That happens to me a bit there. But yeah, the save one's interesting. It's like, you don't have to have ink ribbons or anything like that, so you can really save as much as you want, and you're not punished. Right. I don't think you're punished for it in this game, to tell you the truth, other than the fact that it shows up on your score, so everybody else knows when you take a picture of it how many times you saved. But because I want to say, because I beat the game and I did all 3 endings, because once again, the cool thing I could do is. Because on the PlayStation, I just made a save state right when you can choose all 3 endings. Oh, so I just saved right there, and I played through all 3 of them over and over just to see. I wanted to see them all again, and then also to see what I unlocked, because I forgot it's like you get the costumes, and there's 4 costumes, and for some reason I think the last costume was the only one I didn't get, and I think that might be the one where you have to beat it in like under 3 hours or something like that. Probably.
Right. Yeah.
To get it, I'm not too sure. I couldn't remember it because you can't really tell what it is. I meant to look it up. I think it might be a Jill Valentine costume, if I'm not mistaken.
Really interesting.
Because I think you can get the Regina costume in Resident Evil 3, which is kind of cool.
Okay. I didn't even know that. That's cool.
Yeah, well, Resident Evil 3 is pretty neat because that one I think you get like 9 different costumes in that game. So they really went to town on that one. Yeah. But so you get that, and then there's also you could unlock there is kind of like a bonus game mode where it's pretty much just like an action. You kind of have like mercenaries, but you go in, you have to kill like say 10 dinosaurs in 5 minutes or something like that. It's kind of cool. It's not as good as like Resident Evil 3 Mercenaries was pretty solid for like those kind of bonus games. They had one on the Sega Saturn, had one for Resident Evil 1. And then, of course, Resident Evil 2 had one on the DualShock version. Right. But there was a little bit harder to unlock because you had to beat the game twice and get it in under 3 hours with a rank of an A or an S or whatever. Yeah. Yep. They made that one a little bit challenging. I noticed on the GOG version, they just give it to you right off the bat. Oh, really? Here you go.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, I'll have to pick up the GOG versions. I actually just got all the PS1 versions. Luckily, again, like in a bundle pack for actually really decent.
Nice.
All Black Label, all complete in box. I think I spent like $50 for all 3.
Oh, that's not bad at all. Like I look at that nowadays too, because I kind of look at prices now. Everything is pretty much double of what it was in say like 2010. Right. So I always feel like that pretty much would have been that'd be like getting it for $25 like in 2010. So that's like a hell of a deal when you look at it like that. And then sometimes the other way I look at it too is I go, okay, let's be honest. If you just compare it to like they're way cheaper than they were when they first came out, so you're still getting them for a discount price by that standard. Instead of $50, you got all 3 of them for $50. So
right.
And now, which version of Resident Evil 1 did you get in that set?
1 second, I'll grab it.
That's the thing about Resident Evil 1 is there's so many different ones, and the one that I've always wanted to have the big box version of Resident Evil 1.
Okay, so it's greatest hits, but it's director's cut.
Yeah, because that one ironically doesn't have a black label.
Does it not really?
No, not that specific version, because there's 2 types of there's director's cut 1, and the music is a little bit different, and then director's cut 2 has alternative music in it, and then it has the DualShock support. So it's kind of not the exact same game.
Okay. Yeah, I got you.
And then, but I've always wanted to have the big box version of Resident Evil 1, and the other one I've always wanted is that Sega Saturn one. That Sega Saturn one has only gotten stupid. It was expensive. In like 1999, that Sega Saturn version was expensive. It was like $70-something.
Yeah.
And now it's like $300 plus.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just one of those ones where it's like, oh.
I've seen that RE, the larger box version that you were just talking about. I've seen that on eBay a handful of times for actually really not awful, like $40, $50,
yeah,
somewhere around there. But
I see it every once in a while, and I go, and one of these days I'm like, I'm just gonna throw money down on that because I just want that big box version of it. Because that's the only one. I don't have that one. That might be kind of a fun thing.
This blew my mind the other day. Well, two things actually blew my mind because I had no idea they existed on PS1. And I'm curious to know if you knew about these. One is I just picked it up during during Thanksgiving. But did you know that Riven was on PS1?
Yeah, and the 4-disc version.
Right. So that one took me by surprise because I haven't thought about Riven and Mist in forever, and I just happened to see it just just sitting on a shelf, and I was like, what the I'm like, okay, pick that up for like $12, whatever.
That's a cool one to have.
And the other interesting one is, and I lost the bid on eBay, and I'm so sad about it, but did you know that the original Diablo was on PS1?
It is, and what's the cool part about it is it's co-op.
Really? Okay, I didn't even know that.
Because I remember that being this is kind of the downfalls. The graphics are a little bit muddy, for sure. But the idea that the fact that it's co-op, and it actually, this sounds strange, or is kind of cool, is it does have a little bit of a speed up hack in it. I think you can adjust the speed. It's not that much faster, but I think you can 1.5 it, so it does make it a little bit kind of quicker, I guess, for two people. But I think that's the coolest feature of it is the fact that you could play that game 2 players.
I just I can't imagine, because I was talking to Matt about this actually, because he's such a big Diablo player, and I wouldn't want to buy that game to properly play it per se. It's just the novelty of the fact that it's on PS1. I can't imagine that game plays well on a controller. I just with the D-pad control, because that game's hard as shit, even on mouse and keyboard. So I can't imagine that it'd be fun on a controller, but like I said, just the novelty that it exists for PlayStation. I had no idea, I didn't know that was a thing. So,
well, it's I played through that game with a controller because I used that Devolution X upgrade of it where it speeds the game up, adds controller support, yada yada yada, puts all kinds of stuff in there, and it worked pretty darn well actually. I mean,
really?
there is some stuff where you kind of have to adjust some buttons and so on, but for the most part.
How does targeting work? I mean, do you just face an enemy and it just highlights them or something?
Pretty much, and you just it's no different than I guess you would say Diablo 2 or 3 on console. It's kind of about like that, and it just kind of has that auto attacking, when you're there. Sense. But I played through the entire game pretty much on a controller, and it wasn't too bad.
Interesting.
But yeah, I know that PlayStation 1, it reminds me of one of those ones that would have been a really cool experience to have that in the 90s. I bet you, I could see as a kid, and especially being able to play it co-op, on the split screen or on the same screen, would have made it for a really neat experience.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's super cool. Yeah, I had no idea. But yet again, another game that's just would love to have, not willing to spend $100 on. I'm sorry.
No. As I said, it would be a really cool one just to have on the shelf for sure. I mean, I would love to have that myself. You know what's interesting though? This is something I always think about. Is I know we're kind of going on a little tangent here, but Diablo 2. But this kind of goes to Dreamcast, which I think I with Dino Crisis. Diablo 2 I've always felt would have made a great Dreamcast game. Because it's that same era. Think about it. It comes out right at that time period. It could have been
2000.
Converted right over to a Dreamcast one. Because that's always the weirdest thing is that Diablo 2 never came to a console at that time period.
Right.
It's that thing where it's because and I say Dreamcast because Dreamcast was kind of converting some of those PC games over because you had Quake, you had Unreal, and of course they were going to have Half-Life, on it and so on. And I feel that would have been like an interesting one there, is just imagining Diablo 2. Once again, you could have the keyboard and mouse because Dreamcast had that set up if you wanted to.
Right.
Or, just play it on the controller and something like that. Especially if it had some kind of co-op feature, would have made it really neat too.
Yeah. Well, and even like thinking about, so it's weird enough for like, PC, like historically PC games coming to console, but the opposite's just as true as well. Thinking about, the PC version of Dino Crisis, which I didn't even know existed until this conversation.
Yeah, I literally did until I looked it up and I was like, oh, there's a PC version?
That's so interesting. But the games that I can comment on are like Metal Gear Solid, for example, the PC version of Metal Gear Solid. I have to play that on a controller. I can't do it on mouse and keyboard. Like, it works just fine because it's it's up, down, left, right. There's not much movement.
You have all the buttons, but it seems
it just
odd.
doesn't feel right. So I can't imagine that Dino Crisis would actually feel okay on keyboard. But
sorry there. But you know what you would do is you'd have to go old school. You'd have to pull out your Microsoft Sidewinder, that pad.
Yeah,
I feel, because that's like one of my favorite ones is when you pull up those Resident Evil GOG ones that when it goes to controller it says Microsoft Sidewinder.
Yeah.
But because that's one of my favorite things though is actually finding those PC versions of say PlayStation N64 games, that kind of stuff, and even GameCube, PS2 games and so on, because it's kind of mind-blowing. It's like, it's the same game, but like it's just so much smoother, runs better. It's the clarity. That's always the biggest thing is like those old PC versions, and maybe back in the day, if you're running it on like your Windows 95 or Windows 98, you might not be able to be pumping it full of like its full specs. But like, of course, when you're like running them on any modern computer, it's like, oh, you could just run it pretty much on ultra and they look crystal clear and it runs so good. And yeah, and I think that's what makes a lot of those games, as I said, just like those Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3, like those PC versions are so cool.
Well, now it's making me want to emulate Dino Crisis now. I kind of wish that I would have thought of that prior to this episode, because I'm so curious to see like what does that game, like with it being like a PS1 title and all that, what does that game look like upscaled and in 4K and like all the new technology features that emulation can do, I'd be so curious to see it, like especially like running like 60 frames. It'd be super interesting.
Well, I remember there was one time when I remember kind of, this is an older emulator by now, but like I was upscaling with Dino Crisis 2, and I remember I had a buddy come on over. I think it was my buddy Cisco, who I played Dino Crisis with originally. And he looks at the game and he goes, that version looks so much better than the one I have on like PS3 or whatever the heck he was playing it on recently. And it's like, dude, you just, all you have to do, and just a simple one, is just making the resolution like 1080 even. You don't have to go even farther than that. Like that in itself, it's like you see all these details that they're clearly there, but because the resolution's at 320 on the regular version, you don't see that they have, it's like, oh, they have facial expressions and they have, like you could see all the like, stuff on like their clothes and jackets and even just the backgrounds. There's so much of that great stuff. It was one thing. It still bums me out that like you can't do those on Xbox Series X when they had that emulation there for like that glorious like 6 months or whatever it was. Dude, running Duck Station on there and making those PlayStation games at 4K. And same with the Dreamcast games. It was just like, dude, they look so buttery smooth, and it was like, I was like, man, the Xbox is so good at emulating this, and then that lasted for its glorious moment, and that was it.
Yeah, exactly. That is one comment too. Again, looking at it with like an analytical eye, there is a lot of detail in Dino Crisis, even down to like there's a few shots of like a close up of Gale's face, and just like and granted it's a triangle, but but he has like a scar on his nose, and he's got a scar on his lip, and like stuff like that that I found super cool too. Even down to like environmental design, some of the way that like they have crafted geometry within that 3D space and added texture to it. Again, I think that a pre-rendered version would obviously look a lot better, but having this like sci-fi-ish, like future military base like style that's like deep rooted into the jungle setting and whatnot, like I think that they really nailed that aesthetic. They did a really good job there. It very much feels a lot like some of the, especially like some of the later facilities and whatnot, almost feels like some of the sections of the original Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah.
The aesthetic of it, it's just very concrete and bright LED lights and like stuff like that. Bright orange, bright like yellow paint on the ground and stuff. Like there's just very particular things of that game, of that era, that developers were doing that, and I'm seeing a lot of similarities that way too. So
yeah, no, it definitely, there's a lot of bunker kind of look to it. You totally are in this military research base and so on, and that's probably kind of due to, once again, the style of graphics that they went with, so that they could have the moving camera and everything like that. And I think that's probably why they stuck more with in a sense, kind of a grays, military concrete base, that kind of design, because the second one has a lot of jungle stuff in it. Because you're kind of, it definitely looks sort of like Site B out of like Lost World type thing.
Oh, okay. I saw I wish I would have wrote it down. Let me look at my notes real quick. Mikami mentioned something about, during an interview, about the creation of Dino Crisis, in that comparatively to Resident Evil, he said, and I'm paraphrasing here, don't take this for literal, but more or less, like, he was saying, Resident Evil was his survival horror, right? Whereas he designed Dino Crisis to be more of a panic horror, I guess, is like kind of the way that he described it. And that he wanted it to be more realistic comparatively, which is strange in the sense of dinosaurs, but like he wanted the game to be more realistic and comparatively to Resident Evil. But that whole panic horror side of things, like the way that you get chased down by velociraptors comparatively to shambling zombies, and whatnot,
exactly.
Like and the AI in the game, I actually feel is like fairly smart for what it is. The way that like the dinosaurs, like especially in the way of their pathing, because like they will come like straight at you, and you can see the AI like kind of like auto adjust itself, and sometimes it's a little cheap, because like I noticed as I was running down a hallway, dinosaurs like right behind me, right? And I'm rounding a corner, and instead of it like turning its head to like round a corner, its ass basically just kind of like drifts, like almost like it slides around the corner or whatever. But what it did is like it lined itself up to where it could do a straight charge at me, and I couldn't outrun it. So it did its like little like head swipe thing, and knocked me on the ground and then started biting me and whatnot. So I'd be curious to like hear your opinion about like where the artificial intelligence was comparatively to Resident Evil. Do you feel like any differences there?
No, I definitely think that they definitely made those dinosaurs much smarter, and just the fact of how they move and everything like that, and how you can really get very overwhelmed just by two raptors, can get you really well. Like, it's kind of tough, and like just the interesting attack animations that they'll have, like like they can grab you by like the arm and just start whipping you back and forth. They can knock you up and push you back on your back. They could pounce on you and everything like that. There's just different ways they can kind of go about you to get you. And and then even with that kind of like whatever that survival like kind of panic thing is, Dino Crisis has that thing where like there's some of those dinosaurs that will jump out, and you pretty much just gotta mash the button to like get them off you and so on like that.
It's another one that like I hope is like a translation thing, but like the scenes where you are getting attacked by something and it's just like bright pink down at the bottom, it's just like danger. Danger. It's like, okay.
Well, those are those ones where you can tell, like, that's how you know it's a Japanese game.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And there's the scene where the pteranodons are when you're trying to turn on power, you're coming back from that sequence or whatever, and one of the pteranodons like comes down, it's a cutscene, and it picks you up and it starts to fly you towards the vent or whatever, Yeah,
it's like the most, it's like throw you into the fucking blades.
So okay, one, dinosaurs smart enough to do that. Two, Regina's hanging off of this thing, like hanging on, and you finally like break free, and all she does is fall, and that pteranodon just like goes whoop, like right into the blood,
just
gets splattered over, and it's like, what was that all about? Like just another one of those what the fuck moments,
just
like
grinds that
you
thing
have wings, you could have just flown away, but all right. So,
maybe that propeller's sucking things in instead of blowing things out.
That's what I'm thinking, something. But yeah, just I don't know, for how goofy of a game it is, like it is just so enjoyable. It was a lot of fun going back and replaying, like retreading, some old ground, that I've had in the past. So
Oh yeah, no, it's just one of those ones. It's like you're kind of at like this is just the golden era of survival horrors, is that late '90s into just early 2000s, because it's one of those ones. It's like it's not that far off, just a handful of years later. That if you probably remember this too, but there was a period where like people like reviewers and so on like that, unless you were really into survival horrors, like there was a lot of people that were like, these games are terrible. We don't want to see them anymore. We're sick and tired of the gameplay mechanics, like, and people just like had some hate for something. Like I remember Code Veronica, and this is one I always think about. That game on XPlay literally got a 1 out of 5. That's like how much that people were like getting kind of angry at these games, And it's that thing. It's like if you loved them, then you're like, dude, I don't know what you're talking about. That's like a 5 out of 5 game. Like it's fantastic. But there was a period where it's just like, I just feel like if it wasn't your main jam, people were just like, enough. No, I
100% agree, 100%. And I think it's so interesting nowadays that these games are getting all these remakes, and that's why I'm like pressing like so hard in my own brain about like Dino Crisis needs this remake, because it's a story that's like it's okay enough, to like bring on to a new generation, but like dinosaurs in RE engine, over the shoulder, third person shooter, like why not? Like why not? With the success of how well RE2, RE3, RE4 has done, and they're about to do RE5. I assume that they're probably going to do CV next, like, or 1, or who, like who cares?
Yeah.
Just make Dino Crisis, please, Capcom, please.
Yeah, it's just like one of those ones. Like that's all they gotta do is just like just do a little alternative route for a second, Let's just put some Dino Crisis in there, and see what happens. I'm actually kind of surprised if they actually do go Resident Evil 5, just for the fact that. I love
that's
Resident
what I
Evil
heard
5.
with the rumor.
Yeah, I keep hearing that too, and it's like one of those ones like, interesting. Because
I would have assumed that they would have done 0 probably before 5, but
and 0 was like that's another one of those games. It sounds weird. That game didn't do very good for Capcom. So a lot of times that kind of has, because that game is like the last of the last classic survival horror games.
Yeah.
Because in a sense, survival horror pretty much changes after 0.
Yeah.
It goes into action pretty much once Resident Evil 4 comes out. It's action games, action survival horror, which I have no problem with. I love action and survival horror, but like there's a while before we actually get traditional survival horror again. One of the closest ones I feel like kind of like the comeback is like sort of like when Evil Within comes out and so on. Once again, Shinji Mikami.
Sure.
But and even that one still kind of plays in a similar Resident Evil 4 style. But yeah, when Resident Evil 0 came out, I think it was a double whammy of one, it was on the GameCube, so you were kind of a little bit more limited on how many people were going to get it, and then 2 was it was towards that end where people were kind of like done with survival horrors, like the fad kind of went out, and unless you were a hardcore fan, because I love 0, I think 0 is amazing. Plus,
I thought 0 was cool.
One of my favorite characters, so no matter what, but
yeah,
and those games too, like the graphics on 1 and 0 like are so good. Even in this day, you play those games, and you're like, they look so amazing. They hold up so well. And I really think that like they're kind of like Resident Evil 1, the remake, is kind of like the definitive survival horror game. Like I felt like it's done perfect. It looks amazing. It tells you, it gives you the exact, like, this is what a classic survival horror is. It's got puzzles. You have limited ammunition. You have, tank controls, camera angles, all that kind of stuff. It encapsulates that, like, almost as like that's the best version of that, style.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it's something that whenever we get to it, because I'm sure we'll redo all the RE titles.
As I said, that's I feel this is the new version of Silent Evil, and there's no reason why we can't go back over some of the things that we did already.
Right, because I think it'd be so interesting to play the PlayStation version and then go and play the GameCube version and then play it on PC and then and like just see all those core differences. And even more so with RE2 and 3, and like having the remakes of those games and 4, I guess, for that matter. But yeah, there's going to be some interesting stuff. I'd actually be curious to go see if there are any kind of mods or anything for Dino Crisis, to see if there is any kind of emulation, where there's additional story or additional mechanics or additional, like whatever, and just like see if that exists somewhere, or if somebody has tried to do a proper like remake, but like an indie version of it.
I've seen some like Unreal, like, and I'm not never too sure if it's just kind of like halfway stuff, but
Sure.
there is some people have put some kind of a partial remake where there's cutscenes and everything like that, and I know that that's been always in the talk, and that there is one more Dino Crisis game that actually exists out there. It's under a different title in America. It's called Dino Stalker on PS2.
No, really?
But what it is because there's those Resident Evil Survivor games, and they're called Gun Survivor in Japan. And so there's Survivor 1 on PlayStation, then there's Survivor 2 is a Code Veronica game, and I have that on PS2.
Okay.
And then there's Survivor 3, which is Dino Crisis. It's called Dino Stalker. It doesn't have Regina in it or anything like that, but
Okay, I gotcha.
it's still a dinosaur oriented like a first person shooter survival horror game. And then there's Survivor 4, or I could be the other way around. Survivor 4 might be the Dino Crisis one, but is Resident Evil Dead Aim.
Okay. Yeah. There's so many. Every time I think about RE, in general, it's like I've played pretty much all of the mainline titles if they have a number on them, or like I've pretty much have played majority of those. But yeah, there's so many spinoffs, like so many. What do you think? I mean, not to spin this off into an RE discussion, but the only games I do not have are Revelations 1 and 2. Are they worth it?
I love those games. I think they're great.
Okay.
Like, I'll say this: Revelations 2 is extremely good. That's that one that I used to kind of say, like, back when there was a period where it's like, okay, Resident Evil kind of went kind of action oriented. I was like, well, play Revelations 1 and 2. That will kind of give you a more classic sense. Revelations 1, the only kind of bummer to it is it has no zombies in it or anything like that. You're completely fighting different types of monsters.
Really?
But it's still really good. I still really enjoy it. I bought it when it came out on 3DS, and then I got the Wii U version later down the line.
Yeah.
But that game goes on sale for like $5 every once in a while. I would say 100% pick it up.
Okay. Yeah.
And same with Revelations 2. And Revelations 2 also has a really good co-op mode in it, too. So
Interesting.
Too.
Yeah, because I mean, those they go on sale all the time, and they're the two that like they'll be like $1.99, and I'm just like, like but the collector in me is just like, I should complete my goddamn collection, like so.
Yeah, as I said, they're well worth it. I literally own them multiple times. I even own them on Steam as well too. I think I bought one of those. They had like. I think it was all the Resident Evil games for $20. I'm like, yeah, I might already own these, but I don't have them on Steam, so give me all those there. I'll take them.
Yeah,
and
Steam wants them for $5 each right now. So
yeah, they're 100% worth it. Revelations 1 and 2 both have amazing stories in them. They give a classic scary survival horror. In 1, I like because you're on a boat, which gives it kind of a cool atmosphere. Kind of reminds you of Dead Aim, how that sort of was. Definitely worth it, But yeah, there's so many fun. I'm kind of looking forward to doing some more survival horror things because that pretty much is one of my all-time favorite genres.
Yeah,
When it comes to gaming, I love the living daylights out of it.
So. Similar to for me, like I've always appreciated survival horror, but I have not played the amount of times that you and RJ have sat down around me and talking about survival horror. Like you guys talk about so many games that I'm just like, I've never played that, So that's another very exciting portion of this podcast doing with you is that like I am going to experience a lot of new things, and I think it's going to be a cool dynamic to have the old school guy that has played this a million times versus the fresh player, to get those core different.
And plus, there's so many of them that I still have not played that like I've kind of like discovered that exist on PlayStation 1 and so on like that, where you're like, oh, there's all these cool other ones, and I don't know how good they are, but they're. They exist there because there was that period where there was a lot of, in a sense, Resident Evil copycats, and that's not a bad thing in my opinion. That just means you get more of a genre you like.
Oh yeah.
So I always kind of look forward to that. Plus, going through some of these other ones, like there's one. I'm drawing a blank on it right now, but it's on Sega Saturn, and it's the last Sega Saturn game to ever come out, and it's made by Sega themselves. I gotta look that up. Sega Saturn, but I played through it a couple years ago. Why am I drawing a blank on the name? I played through it a couple years ago on my Saturn, and it's amazing because it gives you the exact Resident Evil 2 experience. Because Resident Evil 2 is supposed to come out on the Saturn, and then it didn't come out. So Sega's like, well, we'll make our own Resident Evil game. That's okay.
Yeah.
And the one they did is really awesome.
Yeah. It's like for me as of recent, the revisiting the Parasite Eve games, like Square's version of of survival horror.
So Deep Fear, that's what it's called. I know I had to look it up. But Deep Fear, here's it didn't come out in the U.S., so there was no way we were going to play it anyways back in the day. Yeah. It was the last game to come out in Europe. So it's super good. And yeah, Parasite Eve's another one that's amazing. Like especially that first one. The second one's cool too. Don't get me wrong. And I even like the third one. But they're different games. That first one, the combo of being it's an RPG and a survival horror.
Right.
Like, oh, dude, that game is so
it's
good.
Another one, man. If you see a Black Label complete and box copy of that, I don't care what it costs. That's one title that I'll actually pay money for because I did the same for PE2. So
yeah.
So.
I know. God, I almost want to say that store in Modesto. I've seen one there before too, but it was a pretty penny of like maybe $160 or something. But
yeah, that's a bit
like something silly. But yeah, that game. Oh man, I'd love to play that one through again. I played that one back in the day and just love the living daylights out of it.
Yeah.
But there's so many of those ones that I can't wait to kind of play through some more. All that good stuff. But I'm glad we started with Dino Crisis because I think it's a great intro one anyways, and it definitely gives you all the right feels. It goes up there as one of the legacy games. I mean, I would say it hangs in for sure the top 10 best survival horror games of all time for sure.
Yeah.
Might be even a little bit higher than that even, but...
So what I asked myself prior to walking into this podcast is like, what did Dino Crisis do that made an impact for Capcom, for Mikami, for, what was the impact of that game? And I guess something that I need to actually research is what came out first? So did Code Veronica or did Dino Crisis come out first? I assume it's Dino Crisis.
It's Dino Crisis because Code Veronica came out in 2000.
Okay. So did that tech of what we first started talking about with following cameras in 3D spaces and all that did Dino Crisis contribute to CV? I guess is the question. Is that part of its legacy? So
I think 100% because you could tell Dino Crisis it's an experimental game. It's meant to let's try some things out and kind of see here. And because worst case scenario, if it doesn't work out, it's okay. It's not a Resident Evil game. Right. No harm, no foul. So they were able to experiment with stuff because, the weird thing is Resident Evil Code Veronica is technically supposed to be Resident Evil 3.
Right.
And the only reason that Resident Evil 3, because Resident Evil Nemesis was supposed to be the spin-off game, but PlayStation had a contract that said they wanted 3 full Resident Evil games. Right. So that's why it got the number. And ironically, back in the day, I remember we used to just call Resident Evil Code Veronica Resident Evil 4. There was a period where that was what that was referred to as. If you were playing Resident Evil 4, everybody knew what you're talking about. But it is kind of that thing that they're putting everything into Code Veronica and to make that be, and that's the big next game after Resident Evil 2.
Right.
And I think both Resident Evil 3 and Dino Crisis were the games that are let's experiment with some stuff and we can really test the waters. And I think especially with Dino Crisis. I'm just thinking of features that are part of Dino Crisis and moving into CV. Is movement, aiming and moving, a thing in CV, or they bring that back? Okay, so that one's not.
So it's almost exclusive to Dino Crisis. Then before 5, I guess by that point.
No, because 5 you can't move and shoot either.
Oh, you can't.
No, I want to say I don't. Well, maybe you can in 5. I know 6 you can.
Yeah, 6 you can. I know 4 you can't, at least in its original version.
No, maybe you can in 5. If you can in 5,
I don't think you can. I don't think you
can. I think 6 would, because I remember 6 being a big leap for as far as controls go. I know everybody kind of talks differently about that, but I'm like, dude, 6 is one of those games where it's it plays really fluidly.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I guess with that, okay, so 3D environments and follow cam, definitely a legacy thing. Maybe gun, aiming and moving just didn't make sense in Resident Evil because of how slow enemies are. Maybe the speed of dinosaurs is why they included that or something. Anyways, just all speculation.
I mean, I'll say this: when you play Dino Crisis, how many times do you move and shoot in that game? Do you think?
Very rare. Very
Yeah,
rare.
I don't think I ever even really realistically use that feature. It's more like one of those ones you notice. You're like, whoa, I can walk and aim, but I don't. And it might just be just because I'm just so used to Resident Evil that it doesn't question me to like, okay, there's something there. I'll just, I guess there's a couple times where I walk around a corner maybe and I can hold it, which is kind of nice, and let the auto aim go. Okay, there's something right here. Boom.
Right.
There we go. But,
Something funny that I noticed too, and this is across all Capcom games of that era, but like when you don't see the dinosaur but you hear the dinosaur, and Regina's just looking right at it, like she's walking straight, but her head's cocked to the left. Yeah, that made me laugh every time that happened too. But
it's like there it is. Well, it's kind of funny because it's like in the original Resident Evil, they take the auto aim out for some reason in the American version because they want to make it harder.
yeah,
And it's like I feel like you kind of need the auto aim just because of the way the game's set up. It's like that lets you know if there's something there or not.
Oh yeah. The other thing that I noticed too, speaking of like walking and being able to shoot, and I don't know how true this is because I didn't get to test it all that much. I'm curious if dinosaurs are triggered by visual or sound or both. Because there was a section where a dinosaur was in a hallway and it was walking away from me, and I was walking behind it, but I had my gun out, ready to shoot it, but I was physically walking, and it never turned around until I fired. So like I'm curious if sound has anything to do with the game either.
So maybe if you don't run, it doesn't hear. I didn't even think about that, but that might be the case.
Yeah. I mean, I doubt that's why the mechanic exists, but because I mean that would be very rudimentary, sneaking, like I guess, like that doesn't need to be a thing in this game, but I did notice that. I was able to walk behind a dinosaur slow walk, without it physically turning around, but I haven't tested to see if if sound does anything,
Yeah,
so.
It could make sense because there's a few points where there's like some like kind of like square rooms where like there's a dinosaur in the corner or something like that, and he's facing the other direction. And by that standard, you could probably walk and not run. He probably wouldn't notice you, and that might be kind of cool just to see if you didn't want to. I mean, you'd probably be better off just running anyways.
Yeah,
if you weren't going to shoot it.
Majority of situations.
I guess unless that dinosaur decides to go through the door, maybe by walking would be what keeps that from happening.
Well, there you go. New mechanic ideas for a remake.
So yeah, so you can have that there, But yeah, everything about Dino Crisis is great, other than the fact that it does have some kind of convoluted, complicated, like key card puzzles and things like that. There is some stuff, like especially when you get to that. I always remember just that final, what I always call the laboratory section. That area has some just goofy stuff that if you kind of miss some things, gosh, are you just running back and forth there and so on like that. And I think that's the one that always kind of makes this game, as much as I like Dino Crisis, it doesn't make me play it as often as other ones because of that.
Yeah.
There's just some of those ones where you know what you're getting into. You're like, okay, I'm gonna know there's gonna be all these key cards. There's double key cards, and the fingerprint parts like that. There's a couple of those ones where like if you kind of forget which guy you need to get.
Right.
Oh God, that's kind of
it's a pain. It's a pain.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or even at the very end, you're supposed to get Dr. Kirk's fingerprints, but if you don't notice that there's a handprint on the wall, like that's another one where like I remember back the first time I played through the game, I didn't grab that right off the bat, and then it was like, where the hell is that at?
Right.
Because like I gotta do that so I can get the card, and then you gotta remember that number that goes with the card too, that comes up in one of those little memos earlier on. Yeah. They definitely made Dino Crisis, as far as that kind of stuff goes, like almost maybe a little bit more complicated than probably need to in a sense. And I think that's why what I love about Dino Crisis 2 is Dino Crisis 2 kind of streamlines that. Sure. It just goes, it doubles down on the fun factor. And just like, it's like, it gives, you also have a melee weapon in that one too, which is kind of interesting too, because you don't have that in Dino Crisis 1, which is kind of, if you run out of ammo, you don't have a knife or anything like that. That's it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And, I don't know. I think just like, there was multiple times where I was looking for a very particular thing in a room, whether it be like, I don't know, a poster or, like some kind of object in the room. And I think for the most part, the game does a great job in telegraphing like what is interactable, versus not. But there's been a couple of times in my playthrough on this run where I was like, I just missed the note, or I missed the thing on the ground, or I missed the thing on the wall or whatever, and then running around for 30, 40 minutes, just like what, because the game doesn't give you any direction. You go to the one NPC that's in there, clacking away on his keyboard, and he doesn't talk to you. So it's like, what?
He just tells you how great he is at hacking.
Right,
You're like, thank
right.
you. That's
such a late 90s thing for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the game in general, I think is fantastic. But yeah, if I were to nitpick it, I mean, there's definitely a lot of like little things that could be, a lot better. But for how experimental it was of that era, I think it's just such a great title,
Yeah, that's why I think it kind of gets a little bit more of a pass, is just because it's trying out a lot of new things. It's giving you this great new dinosaur experience and so on. That even if it does have some kind of goofy, like, key codes and puzzles and so on, you're trying to like figure out, and even just small stuff. Like there's one feature that you take for granted, but it's in Resident Evil the remake, where I like how on the map it tells you like says searching, or then it says like complete or whatever. So like that like if the room says complete, you got all the items out of it. You don't have to go back there. So like when you're trying to go, which room do I need to go to? Yeah. That, and then it's like, another thing too, it kind of bothers me. I wish that the rooms were labeled on the map in the game in Dino Crisis.
Yes.
God, does that?
Yes.
Because sometimes there's one of those ones where it's just like, I know which one I'm looking for, but I was like, which one is it on there? Like,
how do I get there?
Yeah, that's one of the only things is that like, yeah, Dino Crisis does have a little bit of confusion for sure.
Yeah. There's, God, what is it? I think it's just called the library or the library room or whatever. I needed to get back there and retracing, like going through the map in my head, trying to figure out like what is the best way to get back to that room. And then I do that, and then I get to where I think that room is, and then it's not there. And then I go, wait a second, and then like have to like reroute my brain, again, of just like remembering like, all the different hallways, all the different doors, and the way that you get to things and whatnot. So yeah, it's just, I don't know, it can get super convoluted and crazy, so
But yeah, overall though, Dino Crisis, at the end of the day, it's still a good game. It might not be the best choice if it's your first survival horror, but once you've gotten through a few other ones, it's well worth the go. And it's one of those ones I look forward to whatever games we go into next, and especially Dino Crisis 2 and any of the other ones, and just see where, this has been the one game for the last 5 years plus that like is always kind of thrown up. That's like, hey, maybe Capcom might remake this and so on. So hopefully, I think the fact that they put it out on PS5 kind of was like, let's see how well it does. You can always sort of tell that was clearly they wanted to test the waters to see if Dino Crisis was still kind of popular.
Right.
And then they also did the thing too is when they advertised PlayStation Plus for Black Friday or whatever, in the classic game section, Dino Crisis was like on the front cover of it. So
oh, really? Interesting.
So that goes to show that I think that they're thinking that Dino Crisis definitely, they're pushing it a bit. So that might be a sign that there could be some more Dino Crisis coming out.
That would be cool.
That would be totally awesome no matter what. But
But
yeah, beyond that, I think that's a good place to wrap up. Any last thoughts or any good stuff on Dino Crisis?
No, I'd just say, man, like if you have not ever played Dino Crisis, play Dino Crisis. Figure out a way to do it, whether it be emulation, the Dreamcast, PlayStation, PC, if you're able to get your hands on it. Apparently it's rare.
Yeah. Or PS5.
Or PS5 too, yeah.
Yeah, it's got it right on there. If you got PlayStation Plus, you have it.
Yeah, I think it's just a very concise, quick experience, 6-10 hours ish, somewhere around there for the average player. I think it brings in a lot of really cool mechanics. Its design is awesome. Its sound is awesome. I just in general, I mean, like it's just a very solid title. It's not a 10 out of 10 in my opinion, but it's like a solid 8. Like, play it, go play it. It's fun.
Yeah, that's 100. I would say I'm the same boat as you there. That's exactly what it's a great game. There is a little bit off in it, but the dinosaur aspect will make up for everything else. You know what 100%. I mean?
100%.
But yeah, till next time, you can go to, I'll put the little Old Man Orange link tree in below that leads to all the extra podcasts, comic books, old videos, and all that fun stuff. Cameron, you got any place you want to send anybody to?
Not particularly, not at this exact moment, but we'll get that going soon.
Awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, cool. Well, till then, I'm Spencer Scott Holmes.
And I am Cameron.
And we'll see you some other time.